So you're fine. So when you're ready to stop, you'll just click on that. Or call me and I'll come do it for you. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
So welcome everyone to the Village of Lansing Climate Smart Community, Clean Energy Communities Task Force meeting, May 28th, 4 p.m. And Ronnie Hardaway has been the chair and coordinator for over 5 years. So do we want to go around and just introduce everybody?
Yeah, do that.
So I'm Kathy Yen. I'm just completed 1 year with the Village of Lansing on the Board of Trustees, and I'm a member, coach, I guess now I'm the co-chair of the Climate Smart Communities Task Force. And
should I go next? Yeah. My name is Jerry Shang. I'm the Climate Smart Communities Coordinator through Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County. So I've been guiding the task force a little bit through the certification process, and yeah, we're expecting to hear next week. So hopefully you guys get that certification.
Yeah, I'm Chris Skosky. I work on the energy and climate change team at Cooperative Extension. I'm here in, I guess, my capacity as a sometime Clean Energy Communities Coordinator, which is the parallel NYSERDA program to Climate Smart.
And Lynn?
Lynn Leopold, I've been on the task force for a while now, former board member, BZA member.
And then we have a new trustee, Patrick Gillespie, and he's also, so do you want to introduce? I can't hear.
Oh,
You're muted.
You did, yeah.
I'm Pat Gillespie. I'm a newly elected member of the Board of Trustees.
And a new member of our task force, so welcome. And Ronnie?
Ronnie Hardaway. I am currently the co-chair of the task force. We will have to negotiate who's going to attend future meetings. We're really not supposed to have 3 trustees in one meeting because that establishes a quorum.
Just gonna say.
So, if necessary, I can step off to cause a conflict.
Well, or if just one person wants to just observe and not really say anything, then that's okay, but only 2 can participate.
Okay.
I think.
So I can step off while.
Oh.
I think that
you can't step off.
yeah, I think probably for this meeting, Pat can just observe. I don't think he will be needed to vote or anything, but you're going to need my assistance with some of the discussions about the website, et cetera. So, and I think that'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. So, do you want to go over kind of responsibilities, coordinator, co-chair members, Ronnie? And jump in, Chris.
I will continue to be the coordinator, which is the official interface between the village and the CSC dashboard, our municipal dashboard on the CSC website. And then as co-chair, Kathleen and I will sort of be co-managing the meetings, hosting and or participating. I know that I will probably be away for next month's meeting, but for the meeting after that, I will be back.
We know the date of next month's meeting while we're at it. What is it, the 4th?
So the
last Tuesday of June?
Last Wednesday of the month at 4 p.m. Probably 4 to 5.
One of our discussions today was to determine if that was still an appropriate date and time for the meeting, though.
It runs right counter to the Cuba Lake Network's annual conference up in Canoga, which I'm planning to attend, so I wouldn't be here.
When is that?
It's Wednesday, June 25th, up in Canoga at the firehouse at 3:30 to 6.
I won't be here either. I'll be getting back from California that day.
So let's see.
We could,
So
No.
I know that the time used to be Thursdays at 4 o'clock.
it's okay with me, at least during the summer, until I start having Thursday evening engagements. But that won't be till fall.
So is it the time of day that's the problem or the day?
Just the time of day. The day is fine, it's just that it runs right into something else. But not during the summer.
And how about for both of you?
I probably can't be a regular attendee. I saw that I was on the agenda and actually did have a question for y'all, but I wouldn't plan around me because I don't know that I'll be able to.
And so Lynn, Wednesdays do work except for that time?
That particular one, yeah, I mean, everybody's having their annual meetings, their conferences, and that's one I really had hoped to go to, so
Okay.
I would attend that over going to this meeting.
Ronnie?
If it were early in the afternoon, like 1 o'clock, I could do it.
Currently, yes, I think it would be fine.
Would a 1 o'clock be better, or no, lunchtime is not better? Okay.
Not for an hour and a half meeting, no.
I'm sorry?
Not for an hour and a half meeting.
For tentatively an hour, would that work?
I can make that work, yes.
What time are you talking about, Kathleen? 1 or 12?
Probably right around noon or 1. We could
You know,
send
I have
a,
something every Wednesday until 12
so,
at the reuse center.
so 1 or 2,
1 would be better.
Pat,
Works.
1 o'clock? So on the 25th, would June 25th, would 1 PM still work?
That'd be okay with me.
For me, it won't, because I'm getting back from California, but
Oh, you're away.
You're still traveling,
All right,
unless you move another day.
It works for me, so.
okay. So if we change the time then to the last Wednesdays at 1 PM, that sounds like would work for people?
Well, I wouldn't want it that way all the time.
Okay,
It's just that one day.
Just-
I mean,
yeah.
Otherwise, it runs into the Wednesday group at Kendall, which I like to go to, so.
right.
I mean, I think if we keep it in the afternoon, later in the afternoon, it's fine. It's
So
just
maybe-
one day runs into the network's program.
Okay, we could probably send around just to confirm. Okay. Would the last Thursday at 1 work?
Yeah, that would work for me.
Would that work for you?
Yes, I believe so.
Pat, would the last Thursday at 1 PM work?
yes,
Yeah.
that works.
Ronnie, would that work for you?
I believe so. It looks like I will have a potential conflict at times
We're all
with
gonna have
other
conflict at
meetings.
times.
Yeah, it's just, it's not every time, it's just like an intermittent meeting. I know I have one in August that might conflict
Okay,
on the last Thursday, but I think that that's the exception rather than the rule.
okay. So I'm hearing that probably the last Thursday at 1, more people could attend than a Wednesday. Okay, so we'll tentatively do that, switch that to Thursday then, and then we'll just go from there. Okay. And then if, in terms of the progress to date, and I know when I first came on, it was confusing to me what all these policy elements were and where we were at. So I'm just wondering if we could get an update from Ronnie and Chris and Jerry on where we are. I know there's the, on the website, under the Climate Smart Communities, there's the original resolution with the 10 elements and the task force charter. And then the tracking that Ronnie has and the checklist and crosstalk. So for Pat's sake, could we go through that quickly?
Yeah. Should I start, or do you want to start?
I can start, yeah. So the Clean Energy Communities program is a NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research Development Authority. It's a NYSERDA project that provides technical assistance as well as grant awards to municipalities that take actions to reduce energy use, reduce emissions from energy use, and sort of generally transition to clean, green, renewable batteries, right? Some of the actions that the program rewards include things like rooftop solar. They include things like the deployment of electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles for municipal use. They include electric landscaping equipment, efficiency improvements to government buildings, that kind of thing. To date, the village has earned 2,600 points in the program for actions like benchmarking, which is keeping track of regular energy usage for government buildings, community campaigns, a number of which were to engage public residents, right, engage the community about opportunities for community solar, for reducing emissions by installing heat pumps, right? So a lot of the points from the village actually came from these actions over the course of a handful of years, which were steps that the village took to really support people having access to this information. And Jerry and I are from Cooperative Extension. Our energy and climate change team was able to provide a certain amount of that. In particular, we have the Lansing Non-Pipes Alternatives Program, which was, we were able to do a couple of presentations up here, again, try and connect residents to these resources so that they can transition off of fossil heating. Through that, and I don't actually have the exact grant amount, but the village was awarded a handful of grants within the last year or so, two years, since I've been working with you. And there's a certain amount of that money that was sequestered in a clean energy fund. So I'll pin that, unless you want me to go ahead with it, but that was actually sort of what I had meant to bring back up, was an idea for that funding, and to sort of check on the status of it. But I can turn it over as well, whatever's.
So that clean energy fund, that money is sitting there waiting for a project?
Yes, yeah, there was a period last fall, late summer, fall, where we did qualify for some additional funding through NYSERDA. We went through a handful of options. We weren't really able to nail anything down. There are some restrictions on what NYSERDA will let the funding go towards, so some of those we're just not able to kind of, make meet. The Clean Energy Fund dollars, so certain of the grants were able to be sequestered in this Clean Energy Fund, which the village should have at least noted somewhere. And the idea, was for when a future project comes up, now we've got at least a little bit to be able to support something that occurs, something that happens.
And that amount is about?
I believe it's 10 grand, yeah. Yeah, it was from two separate $5,000 awards.
For registering and.
Yes, those came through the, from the community campaign actions, yeah.
Do you have any questions at this point?
That is a no? All right. Yeah, so I'm gonna get into the Climate Smart Communities Program, which is a parallel to the Clean Energy Communities Program that Chris was talking about. So the Climate Smart Communities Program is a program offered by the Department of Environmental Conservation around sustainability. So the goals of the Climate Smart Communities is to award and get local governments, essentially, local municipalities, to engage in climate mitigation and adaptation actions. So things like, having technical plans that'll help you identify funding sources and projects to take on related to climate. Some more tangible projects like supporting your local farmers market, reducing local waste, so that's through recycling, organic waste, composting, things like that. So the program itself offers 121 actions, and I don't want to get into every specific one, just because it's so diverse. There's so many things you can do with the program, or through the program. But the great thing about this program is that it has done really well and complements the CEC program. So through the CEC program, you guys have received a bunch of points for actions you've done, like for benchmarking, right? For getting all the energy use data noted, for having a fleet inventory, which we completed pretty recently, for having a greenhouse gas inventory, doing your converting your LED streetlights, things like that. And then more recently, we've gone through the comprehensive plan for sustainability elements and natural resources inventory. So the village has done enough and was looking to hear back from DEC next week about whether or not they receive certification. So the benefits of the program itself is that it offers a sort of narrative and also a leg up in the consolidated funding application. So the consolidated funding application is an application that the state releases every year in the summer, and having certification in the program gives you a boost up when you apply for these grants, right? So you get a little bit more priority when you're applying for these grants. And the Climate Smart Communities program has a separate pool of funding, right, specifically for this program. So for implementing actions, and for getting, contracting out to write plans, things like that. Yeah, so that's kind of an overview of the Climate Smart Communities program. And I know that the village has been looking to apply for a sidewalks improvement grant, or so once we have notice of, and hopefully positive based on what I've seen, news from DEC, you guys will have a leg up if you apply for the grant this round, as well as in future rounds. But this would be great if you guys could apply for it this year after receiving certification.
So in terms of the artifacts that have already been submitted and approved, we'll know in about a week from NYSERDA what gaps there are for us to then work on.
Yeah, so it's through DEC, so it's a little confusing because they're both state entities, and the programs sound very similar. But yes, the application notification, there's a deadline that DEC has for themselves is June 6th. So we'll hear back from them yeah, next week on whether or not you get certification. If they approve, and it looks like they've approved most of the actions that we submitted for, which means there's no further revisions required. It looks like there's maybe 3 actions that we could get revision on for the future. But once you have those approval notices from DEC, you don't have to work on that action for at least another few years until you need an update. And then you'll be able to focus on other things as we move forward. But if you want me, I can even list out what you guys have approved, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we have the required actions, which is to have the task force, a coordinator, and a national regional climate program. So that's with CEC, that counts as credit. You guys have completed a government's operation greenhouse gas inventory, which is just inventorying all the emissions caused by energy use and fossil fuel use. Benchmarking with municipal buildings. Pretty straightforward. You have the fleet inventory. You have your LED streetlights. You have your energy code enforcement training. And then we have some of the more like waste reduction associated actions. So we have recycling bins in government buildings. We have the community repair, which we did recently, right? We have a website article now about how there is the reuse the Fixers Collective, which helps people fix their items for free. So you can bring in something broken, like I actually brought in a food processor over there that was broken. They helped me figure out what was wrong with it, which was really cool.
That's great.
Yeah, so I didn't have to throw it out and get another one. I was actually pretty
They're good
upset.
at fixing stuff, if
Yeah.
it's got a component that they can actually get at,
Mhm.
they're pretty sharp, those guys.
Yeah, and
And gals.
it's great. Yeah, it's great to have that resource out there for people. So I think if people find out on your website, there's someone who can help you fix your stuff for free, and you're throwing out less stuff, right?
Do we also get credit for having the reuse center, because then people don't have to throw so many things away, they can donate them?
I don't think you can get credit for that unless we did some sort of education component with the reuse.
Yeah,
But
we can take advantage of it, but.
yeah, and that's something you guys can look forward in the future to do. That doesn't have to be a limiting factor, right? And then we have the residential organic waste program. So you guys participate with the county to do composting.
Yeah.
You guys have a drop-off spot at the village office.
Yeah.
We have the comprehensive plan with sustainability elements. There's a comp plan update this year, I believe, right? Because we were talking about it this morning. There were a few things that were missing on there in terms of sustainability elements, so I'll talk further with you guys on how you can get points for that. But yeah, so there's that. There's the natural resources inventory, which is just an inventory of all of the natural environments that you guys have in Lansing that you need to protect or would like to protect. You have your climate resilient hazard mitigation plan, which we'll get into a little bit when we talk about the climate adaptation plan and how it differs from it. But that was done with the county, and you guys should be expecting an update probably this year or next year, just because it's due for an update. You guys have the shades structures policy, which Kathleen, you worked on, right?
Thanks to all of you guys. I mean,
it's all a group effort. But the village has a policy now, right, where we require shading to be considered when there's new construction or yeah, and so that's for heat waves, really, having those natural shading or artificial, like built shade. In the case of heat waves and really bright sun, really hot out, as we know, as the temperatures are getting warmer from the climate, people have a place that they can potentially alleviate some of that heat stress from. And then the last one you guys had was the community campaigns, which was about educating and giving people resources to do energy efficiency work, right? And that's the full list of actions that you guys have completed with the clean energy and also the climate smart communities program. There's more to do, but you guys have done a ton in the past. Ronnie, 5 years was it that you've been working on this?
you've done a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, 5 years.
It's the lion's share,
Yeah.
collecting everything.
Yeah, and I believe there's still more ideas that we're working through, but this is a great milestone to hit. Yeah.
Now, how about for potential revisions?
Potential revisions. So, and I can actually go into specifics with they gave very specific comments to each action that needed a revision. So there was one about culverts and dams. So it says here that the village submitted a list of 3 culverts that were replaced between 2021 and 2024. But other than the general location, no details or photos were submitted. So they're looking for some more specifics on that.
We can get that from John Courtney.
Yeah.
What are they looking for? Spec?
Specs, when it was installed, and photos of the actual culvert itself.
So are we talking about right-sizing culverts that are being replaced because they don't carry the stormwater efficiently?
Yes.
Yeah.
So kind of before and after
Yep.
documentation.
And then for the watershed plan for water quality, that was also something that needed revision. So let me skip through some of the fluff here. Blah, blah, blah. So the plan itself does not clarify the involvement of the village or the representative. So we would need to have some more specific examples of which the village was able to participate in the creation of that plan. And this was the Tompkins County Water Quality Strategy document.
So in terms of stormwater retention ponds and ditches, more detail on that.
More detail on how the village was involved in the plan itself.
And how about execution of it in terms of maintenance, in terms of identifying the public and private retention ponds, and also the timeline for the ditch maintenance and the type of maintenance? Is that what you're looking for?
Not that specific. That might be a separate action when you document it, but this submission was just looking for the plan that was created. And they want specifics as to how the village actually participated in that plan, if the village had participation in it. And it might be, unfortunately, that if the village did not directly participate in the creation of it, that we can't get credit for it. But it's certainly not needed for the certification, and it's something we can look to in the future for other ways to take that on. So yeah. Yep, and that was it for the revisions on actions. We were approved for everything else that we applied for.
Any questions? So, are there any questions at all for either Chris or Jerry at this point?
For us or from us?
Both.
You wanted to get into the clean energy fund option?
Yeah, we could. I mean, happy to kind of, that was a lot to toss out there.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'll throw out, like, is, stormwater, detention ponds, upgrading of that kind of infrastructure is out of interest to the village? Because there are, some opportunities both through the Climate Smart implementation grants. There's some other funding statewide available, sort of depending. So given that the assessment might need revision to gain points under Climate Smart, but if that's like of interest, then some of the things that the funding can be used for from the state could be for mapping, feasibility studies, engineering to like assess some of this. So that's all possibilities. And then if there's a specific sort of project already of interest, there might be funding opportunities to implement right, to actually sort of move some earth and build something. So I'll throw that out there if those are of interest. Jerry and I could do a bit off the top of my head. We could also put together some kind of fact sheet, depending. But it's helpful to hear what's of most interest to y'all, especially because with all of the work, getting that bronze certification, right, is going to give the village a leg up in the consolidated funding application. So sidewalks, yes, but also some of this other stuff depending. So it's worth considering. I know it's a lot to have to think about, but.
I'd like to pipe in on behalf of getting some expertise, maybe, as you suggested, Chris, a survey on where retention ponds, infiltration basins and that kind of thing could be installed in the village to slow water making its way to the lake. The recent rain events all through May just show how clearly we are not doing a very good job of sediment control. There's just so much material heading to the lake every time it rains, and we're in a very short watershed in the village. It's steep. The retention time from, when rain hits up at the airport from the time it hits the lake is very short. And I don't think we have capacity to store enough water on site for infiltration to keep it from heading to the lake. We talk about culverts, right-sizing culverts, and all it does is speed up the water to the lake. It doesn't speed it up to put it anywhere other than going downhill, just so it won't tear up the road. I just think that we need to really look at how to stop water, keeping water in place on the ground before it ever has to go through a culvert. And I mean, there's a lot of development still planned in the village. This would be the time to be thinking about where in our drainages water could be retained longer before it's considered runoff. And I mean, that isn't really helping us reduce greenhouse gas, but it's protecting the lake. Whatever we do on land is going to affect the lake anyway.
Right.
Right.
And that's also, sorry, I was just going to jump off of that and say that that's actually an adaptation measure because the changing climate is obviously increasing precipitation and rain.
Right.
So this is only going to get worse. And so this is really a good point that you're bringing up and a project that we can potentially look into.
Yeah.
There's justification for it, right? Because you guys are right next to the lake and you guys have a very steep slope here.
With a pretty decent amount of impervious surface, right?
Yeah, a huge amount of impervious surface. And we also have the TMDL to worry about. We've got that on our hands as well. So whatever leaves our land picks up phosphorus and delivers it to the lake. And we're in the interest of reducing that. I mean, it serves more than one master by retaining water on the land, recharging aquifers, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, again, if this kind of thing is of interest, it might be something that Jerry and I are friendly, local, knowledgeable extension officers can help put some resources together towards. So definitely engineering and mapping, feasibility studies are a big one to have on hand, right?
Yep.
And then, as things kind of come up, definitely let us know, because we can be helping think about, potentially even apply for like even specific projects. If you know that there's, for instance, a pond or, XYZ, right? But I'm kind of hearing that some of this mapping, feasibility, real exploratory, that's something that we can start looking into, potentially some options for securing some funding through the state consolidated funding application.
Yeah, I mean, I see that as proactive rather than reactive. That we are preparing ourselves for increased intensity of storms, intensity of runoff, and we also know that we've got some big developments coming in the village. So rather than being blindsided by the result of the development, even though there's a lot of there are many stormwater requirements for any new development. It's just, I think that having the engineering and, what were you calling it, mapping, would be really a useful thing. Anyway, I've harped on that long enough.
We would need to coordinate these efforts and investigations with Mike Scott, who is our stormwater management officer. And I know that he's going to be out of town soon for a little while, but so once we start this, it's good to get him involved because he could give us suggestions about what we might need and potential solutions.
Good point.
I will say that the consolidated funding application is due at the end of July. So that is both a bit of time and not a ton of time. So if this is of interest, and especially going out for something like the mapping, yeah, really wherever we can plug in to help kind of advance that, let us know, and sort of whatever procedures the village needs to be going through, talking to Mike. But I will make a note. I just figured out what I'm doing with my Friday afternoon. I'll be compiling a little bit of stuff. So we can have that out and then kind of go from there if this is of interest.
Any other feedback? So that'd be, so is the consensus, we want to go ahead and get some information for both the sidewalk and the stormwater?
We pretty much already have a sidewalk, a planned sidewalk project.
Already?
And I would consider it shovel ready. But the problem is, I don't know if we could postpone that project until we hear from the grant, because it's within this year's work window for our DPW crew. So we might have to negotiate that a little bit.
Oh, and y'all are July to June?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, roughly June to June.
June.
Yeah.
Okay.
And but we had already had plans to install a sidewalk on Uptown Road, and it was in our budget, and it's been budgeted for. So if we want to apply grant monies to that, I don't know if we could apply for a grant if we're already in the process of implementing the project and we'll finish it before the grant is awarded.
Probably not. It might depend, but right, probably not. Yeah.
I was under the assumption that the project has not started yet.
Could help.
It has not, but I'm not sure about the actual planned start date. That's why I said we would have to negotiate it with the DPW crew, see if they could postpone that once we get an idea, if we apply for a grant, when the grant would be awarded or awarded and received.
Right. I can, Chris, are you getting on that? Is that what you're doing? Or
not right this second, but
okay. That's something I can get a quick answer to. I might not have it during this meeting, but I could send a quick email out, like probably within the next few days. Yeah, because I don't think it's if the project has started before the grant is awarded, I don't believe you can get reimbursed for that.
yeah.
So it'd be great if you guys could figure out whether or not there's a project start date yet, and whether or not that start date could be pushed back. But I will have at least an estimate of when the last award was awarded and notified of their applicants of.
So I have a question. There's also was mentioned because of the medical facilities on Craft Road, and for people with accessibility issues, the need for that. Now that's not shovel-ready, but is that a potential to be incorporated?
Both of, that's another project that is a potential candidate. We would just have to find out from John what his project schedule is. I know that he has to start lining up contractors for installation of sidewalks early, and so he may have a specific plan. I just haven't heard the actual start dates yet. So we can, while Chris and Jerry are gathering information, we can gather information on our side and see if we can sync all of that up.
So Ronnie, can you double check? Will you be double checking that, or?
Yes, I will contact John with an email and just say we're looking at potential grants, and we would like to try to apply grants to a project. Does he have any idea about the start dates for the sidewalks? When he worked on the DART drive, he had the contractor come in across a consecutive number of days so that they didn't have to move equipment in and out. So they would start one project, finish it, move to the next project. So that's what we need to find out from John. And I will contact him and see if we can get information.
And then how about stormwater is certainly an issue, and stormwater, and also the ditch to reduce the amount of runoff and protect the watershed and water quality. So we'll pursue that line also.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's just we pull that together.
Yeah, and I just found out the timeline for this grant. So the start date for all contracts awarded through this round will be March 15th of next year. So I know that's pretty far out. Which is, I mean, Ronnie, I don't know what the likelihood of the sidewalk project being pushed out that far might look like, or what the odds are. But if you could check in, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll find out.
Yeah.
Wow. A lot.
Yeah.
We've been looking at some of this for the last week or so. So some of this is mine. I went and looked, and mine was like my last 2 searches or whatever. CFA. So.
Wow, thank you.
But yeah.
Okay, well, let's, there was the template for the climate adaptation plan. So a lot of material, but bottom line, what's involved with that? And just also in terms of regional cooperation that might be beneficial too.
Yeah. So I'll give kind of an overview of what a climate adaptation plan is, and then we'll go into the specifics of how that might compare to pre-existing plans, like a hazard mitigation plan, which is what Kathleen brought up. But a climate adaptation plan and resilience plan is to help communities identify how vulnerable they are to current and future impacts of climate change. And then the document itself is supposed to identify strategies for reducing those vulnerabilities and essentially increasing the resilience of your infrastructure and natural environment here. So the planning process itself starts with identifying the current and future climate change impacts. So that is like taking a look at obviously your demographics, your natural resources inventory, right? That's a great resource for this. And then looking at potential data right now for how warm it's going to get, right, within the next 50 years, how much increased precipitation you're going to get in 50 years, right? And then what actual climate extremities is the village actually going to be vulnerable to based on past history, and then future, right, based on these data, right? And then that is going to be part of a climate change vulnerability assessment. So whatever findings you get from that is going to be turned into sort of a small report. And then once that report is written, there'll be a session for developing actions for adaptation. So that's taking a look at specific ways in which the village can increase their resilience. So things that I've seen in the past with other communities that are looking for increasing their resiliency is to have resilience hub, right? Establishing a resilience hub. That is a place in which people can seek shelter during extreme weather events. It's also a place where if there is an outage, people can go to if there's a backup storage system there. Other ways is just like education, right? Education is pretty broad, but helping people identify what their risks might be. So that's like, it could be even flood insurance related, which is, I don't believe is a huge issue here, based on the FEMA maps that were produced this past year. But it's still something to look into, right? Winter storms, heat waves, yeah. And then that component itself will be helping out with, or someone else will be helping out with identifying the specific strategies for doing so. And the task force will likely have to help with the scenario planning session, which is a way in which, a workshop in which people explore potential scenarios that could occur. So you're not looking at past events, you're looking more into the future for scenarios that might not have occurred already, imagining yourselves in it and figuring out what you lack now to really be prepared for those events, and how you can just bolster whatever existing connections and strategies you have to combat, or I guess not combat, but withstand climate extreme weather events. Yep, and then, yeah, so once that workshop is done, you'll have the report will be produced, and you can use that report to essentially, apply for grants, right, frankly. If you have identified those strategies in a technical plan that you want to follow through on, you'll be able to say that during grant applications, right? We've done the background for this. We need it, right? And hopefully someone will, and it could be the Climate Smart Communities grant, right? If you identify something in the climate adaptation plan, you would be able to apply for it through the implementation grants. So that's kind of the big overview of the climate adaptation plan. And then Kathleen wanted to talk about how it differs from the hazard mitigation plan, which is something that's very similar, but has its differences, which is why it's a separate plan. And I sent out a document, but I'll go over it like row by row, I guess. So a hazard mitigation plan includes natural hazards and human hazards, most of which are not caused by climate change, right? So climate adaptation plans specifically address those hazards and non-hazard impacts. So things like demographic change or climate migration, right? We have changing climates. Upstate New York here is looking pretty good, right? We're not on the coast, and we have a relatively nice agricultural soil, things like that. So people are going to be seeking refuge from tornadoes, flooding from coastal weather changes, things like the non-viability of certain crops over time, right? If you have increased or reduced precipitation, right? If there's a drought, that's something that's not necessarily addressed in the hazard mitigation plan. And then a climate adaptation plan looks into the future. So we're addressing uncertainties and potential events that could happen, whereas a hazard mitigation plan just looks at historical data. To put that into perspective, a hazard mitigation plan just kind of goes over past like few decades of data, right? Or maybe even longer than that if you've done the background. But it doesn't tell you how extreme those flooding events might be in the next 50 years, right? So there's data out there that tells us, we're going to get this amount of increased inches in rain over the next, I think it even goes out as far as like 100 years. There's like a threshold for how little and how much more rain you'd get depending on how bad climate change gets.
Jerry,
That's-
I have a question about anticipatory tools. Can you
Yes.
describe what those would be? Are those tools that data systems? Would we have to purchase subscriptions into the data tools in order to use them?
No, so actually DEC has a few tools that are free for really anyone to use, and this is all pretty much public information. They want people to know about this, and so you don't have to pay into subscriptions to figure out what their calculations for how many inches of rain we're going to get over the next 40 years or 50 years is going to be. Other things, so hazard mitigation plan obviously includes short-term horizons, right? You have to update the hazard mitigation plan every 5 years, I believe. This is looking further into the future. So I was mentioning 40 to 50 is typically like the range that you'd be looking at, and that's to consider like future generations, right? And then the hazard mitigation plan doesn't really consider equity as a component to this plan. So equity is pretty important in the topic of climate change, because obviously our vulnerable populations who suffer more inequities are going to have exacerbated consequences, right? So someone who might be struggling to get, let's say, out of the heat during the summer, right? If the summers are getting hotter and drier, then they might suffer a heat stroke more. They're more likely to suffer a heat stroke, right? So the climate adaptation plan kind of takes a look at that and sees if there's any ways in which we can kind of alleviate the stress of that. And so there's more to go off of, but there's definitely differences in the two plans that I think a climate adaptation plan does better in terms of anticipating changes, right? So this adaptation plan is really just a how do I say this? It's not a workshop, but it's a framework to think about how you can move into the future relating to climate change, obviously.
So could, integrating a rapid response system, which could be anything from a disaster to an extreme weather event, or even another pandemic, be incorporated in that in terms of food distribution and logistics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So an emergency plan update,
an emergency plan update could be one of the things identified. And even frankly, just setting up another system, right? If there's a way you can envision another rapid response system, I know specifically for the other communities that I've worked with, they don't really have a formal plan and communication between the, like the first responders and people who are supposed to be serving as shelters, things like that. So really having some insight into that and figuring out, when we have this emergency, do people know where to go? Are they signed up for Siren, right? I didn't know you're supposed to call, what was the number, like 411 or something, I think? 211? Yeah.
Oh, 211 for just the regular non-emergency.
Yeah, and there's a number, there's a like 3-digit number you're supposed to call in case of an emergency if you don't have access to like websites and things like that. But they give updates on where a shelter might appear. And the reason why they don't have like set shelters is because it depends on what kind of extremity is occurring, right? So if it's like a flooding incident, you don't want people going to a specific designated shelter that is being flooded out, right? But things like that is just examples of how you could incorporate rapid response after or during an emergency to a plan like this.
Yeah, we recently took a pretty good training from DEC and our friends at University of Buffalo. These plans can get really, I think creative is probably the major advantage, because they involve a lot of stakeholders and a lot of like local knowledge in identifying, okay, what might happen, right, with some of these anticipated impacts, what might things look like? And then it allows you a lot of flexibility, a lot of creativity, again, to really think about like what does the village need to be true in order for us to meet some of these scenarios? So it's quite a good process. And yeah, Jerry's ran it through a couple times, and with some really interesting outcomes, right? A lot of momentum, municipal momentum behind it. So they're neat.
Yeah, and you were talking about food pantry before, right? If there's not an established local food system, right? Let's say there's some issue with the supply. We saw it with eggs this year and other things, but you know, if the global food system is disturbed in any ways, you feel the effects locally. And so having a more resilient, right, local food system that you can turn to, let's say your farmers nearby in the area, if you have, you know, frankly, access to that and support from them, you'll be able to better, I guess, navigate through that situation.
So any questions or any other input on? It was a lot of stuff to look at, so it can be overwhelming at first, but.
Yeah, and if you have any questions after the meeting as well, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer anything. And I know that the plans themselves can be kind of long, and I know I sent out, I think, maybe 2 of them.
Yeah.
So it takes a while to get through, but I think it's worthwhile to do.
I think the next step would be, right, the task force indicates interest, but the village board has to want to initiate it, is that right? So that would be the next step, is for this group to, if that's of interest, then perhaps vocalize that to the village board, which then has to opt in. But that's something that we're anticipating Climate Smart Communities program being able to support.
So basically, this committee would then go to the trustees with potential, the stormwater, the sidewalk, the climate action plan, so all 3.
As many or as, yeah.
Just in terms of you need resolutions, if the task force is recommending this.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and the other component to this that we have not gone over yet is I was talking with the town of Lansing and their Conservation Advisory Council. I figured that if, you know, the town and village might be able to work together on the climate adaptation plan, you'd get a little bit more representation, right, with your neighbors, and potentially less work for you guys to do, since you guys can kind of share that workload. I'm talking to their CAC right now. They're interested in it, but they still have to move it to their board. So they'll be making a recommendation at some point, I believe, to their board to see if they're willing to opt in as well. In which case, the village and town might be willing to work together. Yeah.
Unless there's kind of Sharks Jets kind of rivalry that, no, okay.
No, there's always areas of overlap.
Yeah.
It used to be that way, but not so much anymore.
Oh, okay.
Times have really changed.
Because city town of Ithaca, I grew up right on the line, and let me tell you, you know, it was
It's
dicey.
rough.
Yeah.
Well, there was a time when the town of Lansing and the village of Lansing, I mean, the village of Lansing is here because it's seceded from the town of Lansing over zoning, because there wasn't any.
Yeah.
So, you know, we created ourselves before my time, but we created ourselves over the issue of land use control. There was a time when there was a lot of friction, but it's not so much anymore.
You know, I have another question. Is the county involved in this?
Not particularly. The county has their own climate adaptation resiliency plan, but it is not, these plans are meant to be more hyper-focused on the local aspects of things, because the county's more concerned with obviously a wider jurisdiction in which you'll have varying recommendations, I would say. Whereas, for instance, you know, the city of Ithaca might be more concerned with flooding, right? Whereas maybe Groton is not.
So basically the town, since we're part of the town, and how about the surrounding municipalities like we border on the town of Ithaca also, and Cuca Heights.
So they're kind of separate from this process as well. The reason why I recommended the town of Lansing and the village of Lansing is because I know both of you have an active task force and you guys are essentially right next to each other, right? Or are next to each other. And yeah. So it was more the fact that it's a village town
And that shared context, the town of Ithaca wraps all the way around to Ulysses, so they are gonna have some other things that they've gotta be thinking about. But, yeah.
Okay. We want to be mindful of everybody's time here. Okay, now, website, Ronnie, you've been taking care of all of that. Do you want to jump in here?
I have updated all of the information. I had received some feedback from the DEC, some things they would like to have updated, changed. I have done that. I've captured all of the missing minutes from the list of minutes of our prior meetings. And I have also uploaded a couple of recent videos that we had recorded that were missing from our YouTube site. The one, I updated the checklist and the crosstalk, I believe. Based upon the crosswalk, based upon DEC input. So everything's updated. The one thing I would like to do, we were originally tracking our progress per pledge element and actions within the pledge element in a Google sheet or sheets, and I would rather just point the user to the municipal dashboard that would be available from a public standpoint because we're basically tracking what we're planning to do, what we have submitted, what has been approved through the DEC's municipal dashboard. I'd rather just point users to that so they could see all of the action items. Otherwise, we have to constantly monitor that the pledge elements are the same, the action items are the same, and duplicate tracking on Google that we were basically providing into that dashboard. So the next step is to try to find a link from that where just a normal user without signing in could see what our municipal dashboard, our current status.
So a view only of the policy elements and the tracking, is that what it would be?
Yeah, so and I apologize, Ronnie, I actually meant to get back to you on this, and I was looking for the checklist that someone sent to me a while ago. I couldn't find it. So there's no way there is a way for just a regular person to see what the village has done, right? The only thing is this will have to be after we've gotten that notification from DEC and they release it publicly. But it only tracks what the village has done so far, right? And what's been approved by DEC. It will not track, the future projects. But I hope that alleviates some of the work of what past projects have been completed by the village. That link will be available again once DEC has publicly announced that the village has certified.
Okay. We can take a look at that. Otherwise, we will have to have person power assigned to keep the Google Sheet lists accurate with the action items, because the action items, I believe, have changed at least once since we started the list, as far as some being eliminated and some being added or titles changed, etc. So that's what I'm talking about, is trying to sync those two. It's very hard to keep that synchronized properly.
Yeah, that's a process that might just have to be a little bit more redundant, but DEC did release an Excel file with the updated actions. So it might look as something as simple as just comparing the two documents and copying, pasting over things from our previous spreadsheet or Google Doc, and then moving it into the Excel sheet that they've now created with all the new actions.
Right.
I don't think there's a way around that at the moment, but I can bring that up with DEC to see if that's a feature that they're willing to produce in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice if, for instance, if a normal user could see the current status of our dashboard, because we're marking in there the actions that we plan to do, the actions that we have submitted for approval, and then which ones have been approved. And people could, all they could do is read that would be great, because it tracks all of the correct action items. They're worded properly, and they can dig into as much detail as they want. But in the meantime, we will have to find a way of applying resources to keep the two lists synchronized.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, when you go to the Climate Smart Communities Task Force, you do have the Excel, Google, or whatever it is. There's like 12 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah. But keeping that synced with what's current.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one sheet per pledge element.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we can look into that together, Ronnie. I apologize for not getting back to you on that. I was looking into it, and
it wasn't critical. It's going to be kind of a midterm goal, rather not long term. But there was no hurry. I knew you were looking into it, and I wasn't trying to pressure you. But that's my goal, is to try to stop the redundancy if possible. If not, then making the synchronization as easy as possible.
thanks for bringing it back up. I can look back into it. Yeah.
The eternal never-ending list
Yeah.
of things everybody has. Okay.
Yeah, it gets a little tough to keep track of when you have to work with.
I was gonna say, I'm getting flashbacks to when I was the intern and I just had to go do it. And that was just like, oh, can you update this? And I was like, yeah, how many actions are there? 120. It's like, okay, yeah,
Okay.
that was years ago though.
Oh, you guys are young. Wait till you get in your mid-70s. Okay. Anything else before we adjourn?
I did want to bring back up the Clean Energy Fund.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
No. So I guess, yeah, just to reiterate, so that was, I believe about 10 grand. I was looking in my records, but it was 10,000 across a couple of grant awards through the Clean Energy Communities Program. The idea is that funding is earmarked for projects that might arise, right? It allows the village to kind of hang on to it. You're not going to lose that funding. But I bring it back up just to, like, we do want to be on the lookout for potential projects. So some things that communities have funded for about 10 grand do include, you can get quite a bit of electric landscaping equipment. And actually it's recommended to purchase a lot of battery electric landscaping equipment at the same time, because the more batteries and chargers you invest in at once, the greater your interoperability is. You could swap the batteries between your chainsaws, your weed eaters, right, that kind of thing. So that's certainly proven pretty viable for some towns that we've worked with. Another option is a municipality. So they used to, NYSERDA used to allow municipalities to offer direct rebates for heat pump installations, for instance. This was a way of, like, the municipal government trying to incentivize further heat pump deployment, right? They don't allow that anymore, but one thing that other municipalities that I've worked with have tried to set up, and I don't know if this would be of interest, but is essentially like a community fund. So you've got the Clean Energy Fund, you've got some of this funding earmarked, and then what you can do is you essentially source suggestions, right? And you allow people to apply and basically say, man, it would be great to put $2,000 towards rain barrels or something like that. So that's another opportunity, because again, that Clean Energy Fund is the villages to now kind of do with what you'd like to. Some other examples do include, you could plant some trees. There have been municipalities that use those funding amounts for sidewalk improvements, although for $10,000, you won't get a ton of sidewalk. But that's also kind of in the mix there. So just some options to consider. I'm happy to provide some more information, but yeah, just like I said, I wanted to take the opportunity to sort of remind everyone that we've got that, and that as things are kind of coming up, some of these other discussions, if there's something that really starts to strike fancy, right, you do have this $10,000 can be put towards clean energy projects, or really anything that's going to lower emissions. So sidewalks, bike racks, right? Theoretically, they incentivize walking and biking. So some options there.
Chris, would you mind putting together, and this is not something you need to do this week, but when you get a chance, put together a list of things, or point us to a list, an online list of suggestions on what other municipalities have done. It would be particularly helpful if going forward, we would basically seed ideas within the trustees to see if we can get some buy-in on some projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I can get that kind of put together.
So a shade structure might be one.
Yeah, you could dedicate.
So the bike racks that you mentioned.
Because these, again, this funding, now that it's already been sort of claimed, committed by NYSERDA, it is the villages. And so the thing that NYSERDA asks is that these projects be spent towards reducing emissions or sort of, sustainability in that vein. So a shade structure, especially as it pertains to the policy, bike racks, sidewalks, planting trees, these sort of like mini grant funds, the landscaping equipment, right? So again, I can put all this together, and I'll probably not have it this week, because my Friday is stormwater grants, but I'll have it out with enough time for you all to take a look at before the next task force meeting.
Great. Wow. So in terms of support, you guys are offering a ton of support.
That's just, that's what we do.
A ton of research and assistance, so this is awesome.
We like to say that we're, at Cooperative Extension, we're helping you put knowledge to work. Yeah. That's true.
It's a new meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry. We are being recorded, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So is there anything else?
Thank you all for having me and letting me just spew.
Wow.
Good.
Well, thank you to Ronnie for 5 years and still sticking with it and doing everything. And the staff has been fabulous too. And you guys, wow.
Sure.
Awesome. So, formally, is there a motion to adjourn?
You don't need a motion.
Oh, you don't need a motion, thank you. I'm glad you're here. She's awesome.
And I actually